I've died twice and seen the afterlife. It's not what you think. It happened so quick the first time, like a blink and you would miss it kind of fast. I was taking one of my daily evening walks I took every night. As I was crossing the street, heading back to my house, I saw the bright lights of the car coming straight towards me. Then seconds later I saw nothing as I was taken to a new existence, one that I learned is not very pleasant. Before I get to all that, let me introduce myself. My name's Joe, and I'm a pretty normal guy. I'm 30 years old, and I work as a construction worker. I'm not married, and I don't have any kids. The only company I have is my bulldog Russell. I live in a simple one-storey house, and don't really go out that much. I don't have any friends, and the only visitor I get from time to time is my younger sister Janice, as my parents moved almost 5 hours from where I lived. I didn't have a good relationship with them. I felt they didn't accept where I ended up in life. While my sister was rich, living the life in LA as an executive producer for a hit show, I was stuck at a mediocre job, barely paying the bills. I had a great relationship with my sister though. We would go out for coffee once a month if she was available. She also had 2 kids, who I also had a good relationship with. I was good old Uncle Jay to them. I'm a pretty boring guy, to be honest. The only fun thing I really enjoy doing is taking long evening walks by myself. You're probably wondering why I don't take Russell with me. Russell doesn't like going out at night. He whimpered the whole time I took him out one time and was a constant drag during it. I didn't mind not having him though. Most people feel safe having a dog with them on walks at night, but I never felt fear from the night. I love the quietness of everything, so peaceful and relaxing. I would think a lot on my walks about my life, jobs, future, and so on. Now, back to the story. I didn't remember feeling any pain from the impact. As soon as the car hit me, everything went black. I found myself falling into complete and utter darkness. I landed with a hard thump on the ground after falling for what felt like forever. I don't know when, but I eventually woke up after the fall. The impact caused me to black out for God knows how long. I stood up, staring into the emptiness of the dark void around me. "Hello?" I called out. Nothing, but my voice echoing all around me. I started to panic then. Am I dead? Is this heaven or hell? Is this where we go when we die? Suddenly, a loud voice boomed behind me. "Joe Dafford, your trial will commence." I felt 2 huge hands suddenly lift me up the ground. While screaming and crying out, I tried to scramble around and escape the grips, but they were too strong. The voice then spoke again. "Stop your petty cries. They will do you no good where you may go." I could barely whimper out, Where am I?" The voice was silent. Then it boomed, making my eardrums ring as I heard it say, "You are in the forgotten, a void between space and time where you will be judged for your sins." I asked again, a little louder, "Are you God?" The voice laughed, a laugh that made the void around me shake. "Stupid human, there is no God. There is only us, the elders. We have ruled this universe before time even existed. We are the creators and the destroyers." I couldn't comprehend what I was hearing now. I wasn't a religious guy at all, but I still believed there was a God in this world. Now, to know we are ruled by a group of such powerful beings truly terrified me. "Why can't I see you?" I asked. The voice said a little softer, "We have no form. Our form is only visible amongst ourselves. If I were to show you my form, you would be blinded for all eternity." I thought now, what being could be so powerful its look alone could blind someone? What will they do with me? "I can read your thoughts, human. To answer you again, I am judging you to see where your presence belongs now." The voice paused and then said, "Joe Dafford, your sins have been collected. We shall now see where you belong." Suddenly, I was taken to a place so horrible and disturbing that I couldn't even open my eyes once I saw it. Fire was all around me. I looked around to see people burning alive and being tortured in the most painful and unimaginable ways. I opened my eyes again to see hands reaching down and pulling me into the fire. I screamed and kicked with no results. They kept dragging me down as their screams filled my ears. Then, I was back in the void. I heard the voice boom now. "You are lucky, human. The council has spoken and we have decided to give you another chance. Your sins have not been forgotten though. Be wise with the choices you make now." I felt myself falling again now, into the void, going deeper and deeper as my screams echoed all around me. I then suddenly woke up to find myself in the hospital. I looked to see my sister and the doctor looking at me, bewildered. "How is this possible?" I heard the doctor say. "How long was I out for?" I asked in a weak voice. "Joe, you were dead for 12 hours, my sister said, with tears in her eyes as she hugged me. Dead? 12 hours? I thought. It felt like maybe an hour when I was in there. The doctor just stared at me now, still with a bewildered look in his eyes. After a couple more minutes, the doctor said, "How do you feel?" "Fine," I said. "Fine? You have 6 cracked ribs, a concussion, one of your legs is broken, and your collarbone is broken," he said in shock. "Why don't I feel it? I can't move one of my legs, but it feels like it's asleep, not broken. My head doesn't hurt at all, I can breathe normally, and my ribs feel fine." I touched them and could feel multiple cracks. Nothing. The doctor kept me in the hospital for the next 6 weeks, with my sister visiting almost every day. She constantly asked me what happened after I died, what I saw. I didn't want to tell her though, not because I was afraid she wouldn't believe me, but because I didn't want to think about what I saw. The horrors of what I believed to be hell gave me frequent nightmares. The arms, I could still feel them wrapping themselves around me, dragging me below. The doctor eventually let me out after some convincing from my sister and me. When I got home, my mind thought to the last thing the elder said to me. "Your sins have not been forgotten though. Be wise with the choices you make now." What did he mean by that? I'm sure I've made mistakes in the past. I was even a smoke addict once. I got over that though, and I don't drink or do anything remotely like that. I just decided I was given a second chance for a reason. So how would I use that chance? I continued living the same. I felt there were no problems in my life. Otherwise, I would have been sent to hell. Life continued on normally for the next 15 years. I eventually met a woman named Michelle, who would eventually become my wife. We had 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, and we lived simple and well. I continued my job as a construction worker and even got promoted a couple of years ago. My salary went up significantly, and we moved into a new home last year that was much bigger than the one before. Russell died a couple of years ago, and we got a new bulldog named Sarah. Unlike Russell, she loved going on night walks with me, as we went every night together. I realised I enjoyed having company with me on these walks. I never realised how lonely it was until I had someone with me. Sarah was my protector, as anyone who we passed on walks, she would growl until I told her to calm down. I never told Michelle that I had died before. She knew I was in a car accident, but she didn't know what I experienced at that time. On my 45th birthday, me and my family decided to go out and eat at our favourite restaurant just next door. After dinner, they surprised me with a huge chocolate cake, which was my favourite. I looked around as I was eating my cake and realised how good of a life I had now. I had a wonderful wife, beautiful family. This was my second chance. As we walked home from dinner, we decided to take a trail we knew had a shortcut to our house. On the trail, we looked at the beautiful stars in the sky in the night and talked as we walked. Then I saw a man approaching us, quickly. He had all black on, and I couldn't see his face until he got closer. He had dark, swollen eyes with big purple bags hanging from his eyes. He was tall and skinny and had short black hair. He stopped right in front of us and reached into his pocket, where he pulled out a gun. "Everything you got," he said in a deep, gruff voice. My kids started to cry, and the man pointed the gun, the gun at them, screaming. Tell the little brats to shut the hell up or I'll make them. My wife hushed the kids as we gave the man our wallets. He took them, then pointed his gun at Michelle's ring and said, "The ring. Give it to me." My wife looked at the ring, then at me, and said to the man, "No. Give me the damn ring or I'll blow your brains out," he said, pointing the gun at her head. Michelle again said somehow, in a calm voice, "No." I wasn't surprised. She loved that ring with everything she had. It was a big diamond ring which was very expensive and that I gave to her in Hawaii when I proposed. I looked at her terrified, but she looked back at me somehow with a calm expression. "Stupid bitch," I heard the man say, pointing the gun even closer to her. Without even thinking, I ran towards him and tackled him. We wrestled for a bit on the ground, then we both heard a loud bang from the gun. The man got up after the shot and fled, as people now were visible on the trail. I looked down and touched my stomach, and to my shock, my hands were red with blood. My family screamed when I fell to the ground, blood coming out more rapidly from my stomach where the shot was. People on the trail started to run towards as I heard my wife say with tears in her eyes, "Hang in there, honey. You'll be okay. Please stay with us." The world started to turn black now. No, not now. Not when everything is so perfect. I could hear the cries of my wife and children as people crowded around. Then I was gone. I was falling again now, the feeling all too familiar. I landed with a loud thump on the ground. Then I stood up quickly and started banging my hands on the ground with tears in my eyes. "Why now? Why?" I screamed into the dark void. Everything was right. My life was so perfect. Then the elder booms his voice. "Silence, human." I stopped screaming, with tears in my eyes. We gave you another chance, but yet here you are," the elder said. "It wasn't my fault. I was protecting my family," I screamed back, not caring anymore what they would do to me. The voice was quiet, then it boomed louder than I had ever heard it before. "No human has ever spoken to the elders like that. You should beg for sins to be healed." Then the arms came and picked me up again. I kicked and screamed even louder. The fire then came into view. The all too familiar screams and cries came back. No, not again. I screamed as I felt the arms pull me down. I begged for mercy and cried to the elders. They didn't come, and as I got closer and closer to the fire, I thought of my family, my beautiful wife, my wonderful kids. Tears poured out of my eyes, knowing I would never see them again. I closed my eyes, the image of my family in my mind. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the void. I got up as I heard the voice boom. "Kneel!" I kneeled quickly, unsure of what was going to happen. "Although you disrespected us, we have decided to give you mercy and one final chance. We have seen what you have done with your life now. You have finally found value in this world." I cried tears of joy, knowing I would see my family again. Then the voice said, "Know this, Joe Dafford. This truly is your final chance. If you die again, you will never return to the real world." "I know, thank you," I said quietly. I closed my eyes and started to fall again into the darkness. As I fell through, instead of fear, I felt the first time, I was happy. I was going to be with my family, see them grow up and be a father to them. I closed my eyes, smiling, as a single tear rolled down my face. When I opened my eyes, I found I was in hospital again. My family were all sitting in chairs crying, but once they saw, ran over now crying tears of joy. I hugged them with all my might, crying as well. The next 5 years were great, but the last 15 years have been a living hell. My daughters grew up fine and were wonderful until high school. Then they started to hang with their own crowd, smoking and drinking all the time. We argued with them constantly, but they never listened. They continued to drink and smoke until one night I got a call from the police. My daughters were in a car accident and had died upon impact. The police learned from a friend of theirs that when they left the party they were at, they were extremely drunk. The friend tried to warn them, but they didn't listen. Michelle and I were heartbroken, and the death of our daughters is what led to our divorce shortly after. While my daughters became a mess, my son was perfect. He was everything a parent would want a child to be. He was kind, smart, intelligent, and never argued with us. I loved him so much, and I was shattered when Michelle took him away after the divorce. They moved all the way to New York, and I've never seen my son since. I've tried writing to him, but never got a response. I tried calling, but he never answered. When all couldn't get worse, my sister got cancer a couple months ago, and she died last week. Everything was gone now. As I sat on my couch one day drinking, I thought to myself, did they know this was going to happen? Is that why they sent me back? Was this my punishment for disrespecting them? I sit here now writing this with the gun in my hands. I want everyone to know that there may be a God, but there isn't just one, and they are not forgiven. If you ever disrespect them, you will be cursed like I have been. I was given 2 chances, and I've wasted both of them. I'm ready now to accept my fate. I've seen hell and have truly experienced it. I no longer have a purpose for this world, but I have one in the void, and it's calling to me now. My wife and I wanted a child early into our marriage. We wanted a child we could call our own. We tried time and time again, but to no avail. My wife just couldn't get pregnant. We watched as all our friends had children, while we were stuck with nothing. My friend didn't want to adopt like many of your friends suggested. She wanted a child of her own, of blood and flesh. As time went on, my wife became more and more depressed. She wanted a child so bad, and I felt guilty that I couldn't give her one. Eventually, my wife finally gave in, and we decided we were going to adopt a child. I tried cheering her up on the drive to the doctor checkup before we went to the adoption centre. She didn't talk or even look at me, and I could see out the corner of my eyes that she was crying silently. When we got to the doctor's office, we checked in and grabbed the 2 available seats next to us. There was a man in the corner of the room, and I could see he was staring at us. He had dark blonde hair with green eyes. He stared at me, and I got a weird feeling from him as I stared back. When we sat down, the man got up, and I could see he was at least 6'5", with big arms and a good build. He walked over to me and my wife and said in a dark, deep voice, "Having some trouble, Mr. and Mrs. Roberts?" My wife looked up at him with a confused look on her face. "Sorry, do we know you?" my wife asked. The man chuckled, then said, holding out his hand, "No, but let me introduce myself. My name is Kyle Waller, but I'm known to many as Lazarus." We, not knowing what to do, shook the man's hand. I asked now, "Is there something we can help you with?" The man looked at me and said, "It's not I that needs help, but you." My wife, already being in a bad mood, said, "Look, Crete, just tell us what the hell you want and leave us alone." The man stared at her for a long time, and I could see my wife starting to shake now. He said slowly, "I know the troubles you and your husband have had trying to have a baby. What have I told you that I can help you?" We were silent now. I thought to myself, how the hell does he know we can't have a child? I asked now after an awkward minute of silence, "Who the hell are you?" "I am a servant to a higher being." "No, it's not God. It's the one you know as Satan." I was about to speak, but the man shushed me and continued, "I know what you are thinking. I don't wish to hurt you, and neither does my master. We want to help you. We have seen the pain of this world, and we wish to cure it. I have been watching you closely, and have seen how much you both have been tortured. I simply wish to help uplift you of your torment. Nothing more." I didn't know what to say. I sat there unable to process what I was hearing. I looked over at my wife, who was frozen in place, unable to even look at me, as she had her eyes glued on the man. He spoke again. "I know this may be a lot to take in, but know that I only wish to help you and this world." He then took out a small bottle from his pocket. The substance inside it was purple and had a little sparkle if you looked closely. He then said to my wife, "I know how bad you want a child of your own. I have seen the restless nights you have experienced and the hours you have cried in your bathroom." He then held the bottle right in front of her face and said, "Drink this. and your wish will come true. My wife stared at the substance. I was shocked when she grabbed it out of his hand. I spoke quickly now to her. Barbara, don't listen to this guy, he's crazy. That could be poison for all we know. We can have a child, even if it isn't our flesh and blood, it would still be ours. She thought for a moment, staring at the bottle before the man said, It's your choice whether you want your own child or someone else's. I panicked as she opened the bottle up and in a swift motion drank the substance in one gulp. I stood up, terrified, as I saw her collapse to the ground. What the hell did you give to her? I screamed as I ran up to the man and grabbed him by his shirt. He smiled before saying, She is fine. Give her a day's rest and let the potion do its work. I screamed and punched the man who didn't flinch. I could feel the bones in my hand break as I punched him. I dropped to my knees, crying out in pain. When I looked up, the man was gone. The nurses rushed over to my wife and me. I could hear them calling 911 on the phone. I ran to my wife, ignoring the pain in my hand. I put my head against her chest and could feel her heartbeat. I sighed in relief, then whispered in her ear, You'll be okay, Barbara. Everything will be okay. After arriving at the hospital, the doctors took my wife and ran a scan on her. While doing so, they checked on my hand, which, not surprisingly, was broken. After being given a cast, they walked me over to where Barbara was being scanned. After the scan, the doctor came up to me and he told me my wife was fine. She has no brain damage or anything like that, the doctor said. They then put her in a room and suggested I go home and get some rest as well. I'm not leaving my wife, I said. I tried sleeping that night in her room, but I couldn't at first. What the man said was still in my head. Let the potion do its work. I looked over my wife, who slept so peacefully, her breathing so calm and relaxed. I eventually somehow dozed off, and when I woke up, I saw my wife wide awake, looking out the window. Barbara, I said, rushing over to her. She looked at me, then smiled and said, I heard you broke your hand. Are you okay? She said. I'm fine. How are you? I said. She smiled and kissed me when the doctor walked in and said, She's doing wonderful. We scanned her again, and we saw in the scan that she's pregnant. I don't know how, but she is. It's incredible, the doctor said in amazement. Congratulations. My wife hugged me and she started to cry. I was happy as well, but I was more shocked than anything. It worked, the potion. But how? Then I looked at my wife and saw how happy she was. You're going to be a father now. Be happy. The next few months were full of anticipation. Barbara was now full of life and happy again, and I couldn't have been happier myself. I never gave the potion or that man any thought during this time as we were preparing for our baby. We fixed a spare room upstairs into a nursery and bought toys and a crib for the room. During the last checkup at the doctor's, we learned that we were going to have a boy. We painted the nursery blue and fixed it up even more. We wanted it to be perfect for our son. As the days grew closer to the delivery, we started to get more and more excited. Finally, on a Saturday morning at 9:36, Barbara's water broke and we rushed her to the hospital. I waited right by her room for about an hour before a nurse came out and led me inside. Are you excited to see your son? She asked in a cheerful voice. Very excited, I said. After leading me inside, the nurse walked him out. No one else was in the room as I walked in to see Barbara holding our son in her arms. He was sleeping when I walked in and woke up when I walked in. He didn't cry though, and I could see tears in Barbara's eyes as she was looking at him. Our own beautiful son, she said to me as I leaned in to look at him. Tears started to fill my eyes now as I said, He's perfect. Do you want to hold him? She asked. I would love to, I said. Barbara carefully put the baby into my arms as I stared into his eyes. He looked at me curiously with his dark brown eyes and puffy cheeks. He was small, but not too small. As me and Barbara were looking at each other and our new son when we heard a voice in the corner of the room. Congratulations. I'm glad to see you're both so happy. We turned quickly to see the man from before with his dark blonde hair and glistening green eyes. We stared at each other for a moment before the man walked over and looked down at our son. He's gorgeous. He's even got your eyes, he said, looking at me. Yeah, thank you for helping us, I said to him. He looked surprised as I said this. Of course, I'm here to make this world a better place for people like you. You're probably wondering why I'm here, and I'll get straight to the point, he said, as he pulled out a crumpled letter of his pocket. He handed the letter to Barbara and said, The child will be perfectly healthy and normal, as long as you follow these rules in the envelope. I knew it. I knew there would be some kind of catch. Barbara opened the envelope and slowly took out the piece of paper inside. We read the rules silently in disbelief. Rule number 1. The child's name must be Lazarus, and he must never be called anything else. Rule number 2. Do not look at the child when it's eating. Rule number 3. The child must not go to school or interact with kids. He won't play well with them. Rule number 4. The child must be in bed by 10 p.m. every night, no exceptions. Rule number 5. On the child's birthday, it must remain in its room no matter what. Rule number 6. If you hear screaming from the child's room, don't go inside. Rule number 7. If you see the child's eyes turn yellow, run out of the room immediately. Rule number 8. On the night the child turns 15, he must be chained up outside. If he isn't, may the Lord have mercy on your soul. Rule number 9. If the child somehow is not chained, as in rule number 8, you will have to kill it. We stared at the list in awe and terror. We then looked at our son. How can our son be this dangerous? Chained? Yellow eyes? What kind of madness did we get ourselves into? Barbara then looked up and said in a loud, angry voice to the man, What the hell is this? Is this some kind of sick joke? The man said in a deep, serious voice, This is no joke. Those rules must be followed, no matter what. We looked down at the list, and I said, Why? What did you do to our child? Did you curse him? I asked as we looked up and saw the man was gone. We were speechless. We looked at each other before Barbara took a hold of my hand and said, Dave, I think we have to listen to these rules. Why? This list is so bizarre. It can't be real, I said. She was silent before she said, Dave, we have a child in our hands that the doctors told us we would never have. How much more bizarre can this get? She was right. I looked down at the rules again and sighed. Well, let's start with the first rule. I looked down at my son and said, Hello, Lazarus. The child looked up as soon as I said its name and opened its eyes fully wide and started to giggle. Barbara and I stared at Lazarus before Barbara said, Well, how hard can these rules be? Lazarus grew up to be a smart and intelligent kid. Barbara homeschooled him and taught him well. By the time he was 8, he was already doing fairly advanced math and other subjects. We followed the rules with our lives. Most of the rules were simple. We always called him Lazarus and we never looked at him when he ate. He was homeschooled and we didn't live near any kids his age, so we never had to worry about rule number 3 or rule number 4 either. We didn't like rule number 5 because Lazarus started to cry and get upset that he would have to stay in his room during his birthday. He surprisingly never argued about that rule, but we hated that we had to lock him in on a day that should have been celebrated. The only rule that became a problem was rule number 6. When Lazarus turned 12, he screamed almost every night. He screamed so loud it felt the house was shaking. We had to buy earplugs just so we could sleep at night, but even those didn't help. He screamed for about a month or 2 before finally calming down. After that, life went back to normal. I never experienced rule number 7, but Barbara did. One time she was home alone with him in the kitchen. She turned to see Lazarus staring at her with bright yellow eyes. Barbara said she ran out of the kitchen so fast like her life was on the line. She had the feeling she was being chased, but she never heard footsteps behind her. When she waited a good minute or 2, she went back into the kitchen to see Lazarus reading a book. He looked up at her and she said her heart stopped for a moment before she saw his eyes were normal again. Lazarus was a normal kid overall and never showed weird signs of any kind. Once he turned 13 though, we noticed some things. They were small, but definitely visible. He got angry quicker, and he seemed more aggressive with everything. He also started to growl in his sleep, a low but deep growl that woke me and Barbara up a lot. Rules 3 and 4 started to become harder now as Lazarus started to rebel against us. Why can't I go to school and hang out with kids my age? He would frequently, in an angry tone. Because you can't, son. You wouldn't get along with the kids, I would say. That's bullshit, Dad. I just want some friends of my own. I want to be normal. I would never know what to say after that. I couldn't tell him about the list of rules because I knew he wouldn't listen to them. Rules were the last thing on his mind now. We started to become afraid as his 15th birthday started to roll around. I went to Home Depot and bought the strongest chain I could find. When I brought it home, Barbara panicked, thinking it was too much for Lazarus to be chained up outside. We would have locked him up on his birthday. Now we have to chain him up like a dog outside? Barbara said at me. We have to follow these rules. If we don't, I'm afraid of what will happen to us and him, I said in an anxious voice. She still wasn't happy. The whole week I would hear her crying in her sleep every night. I did feel bad for our son, but I knew and she knew that what would happen if we didn't follow that rule. The night before Lazarus turned 15, he said to us as we were eating dinner, "Why don't we ever celebrate my birthday?" Barbara and I froze as we heard this. We knew this question would come up eventually, and we tried to come up and answer, but we couldn't. Barbara spoke first. "Lazarus, just because we don't celebrate your birthday doesn't mean we don't love you." Lazarus then spoke in an angry tone. "You answer my question. Why the hell don't we ever celebrate my birthday?" Barbara was silent now. I finally spoke up. "We just can't, son. We can't tell you why, and I know that may upset you, and we're sorry, but we just can't celebrate your birthday." Lazarus was silent before he spoke in a much angrier tone. "You can't tell me why? That's your best excuse? Can you not tell me either why I'm locked in my damn room the whole day?" No, Lazarus," Barbara said. "Screw you guys, I hate you," Lazarus said, slamming his hand on the table before running upstairs. Barbara broke down now, sobbing uncontrollably. I tried to comfort her, but she pushed me away. "Our son hates us, Dave, because of those stupid rules. It's not fair on us or him," she said as she ran upstairs to try to talk to Lazarus. I was alone now at the table. Tears also started to form in my eyes. I knew there'd be a cost. Anyone who works for Satan is evil. He doesn't want to help this world, he wants to make it worse. At 11 that night, I went into Lazarus's room. I picked him up from his bed and brought him outside into the shed we had in our backyard. I tied the chain around him and wrapped it against the table in the shed. To be safe, I also locked the shed door when I was done. I went inside and looked at the time, which now read 11:37 p.m. I went into bed and drifted off to sleep. I woke up to screaming from outside. I turned to my side to see Barbara was not in bed. I panicked and ran downstairs out into our backyard. I saw Barbara on the ground, crying in fear. I ran over to her as she said, "I'm sorry, Dave. I just couldn't leave him alone. I wanted him to know we care about him, and he's not alone," she said in tears. I turned to the shed, which was now violently banging around. Then we heard the chain snap inside the shed. Oh no, only a matter of time until he breaks the lock. I helped Barbara to her feet as we ran inside before we heard the lock snap off right behind us. We ran upstairs and into our room. We could hear fast footsteps approaching. We looked around to see where we could hide and decided on our closet. We ran and hid inside just as we heard the door bust open. We could hear growling as we saw Lazarus through the gap in the closet door. That's not our son, I thought. What I saw was a creature that resembled a goblin, with a small hunch on its back and glowing yellow eyes. It was crawling on all fours, growling like a wolf. Barbara was shaking in fear as I held her close to me. She was sobbing and I had to put my head over her mouth to keep her quiet. The creature that was our son was crawling around the room, looking under the bed and all around. Its eyes went to the closet. Please don't come here, I thought. The creature slowly started to crawl towards the closet. I could see its glowing yellow eyes staring almost right at me. I looked around and thought fast. I grabbed a couple of blankets on the floor and flipped them over me and Barbara. We heard the closet creak open slowly. We held our breaths as the growls started to get closer to us. We could see the face of the creature as it pressed against the blankets. It got closer and closer, and we backed up as far as we could. Then, by some miracle, the face backed off, and we could hear it crawling away into the other room. We were silent and we didn't dare move. We were paralysed with fear. Somehow, we managed to fall asleep in the closet with the blanket still over us. We woke up and didn't move until we saw the sunlight outside. We walked out of the closet slowly and started to look around the house for Lazarus. The house was a disaster. Glasses and cabinets were broken, and almost all the windows were shattered. We called out all day for him until we eventually called the police and searched and reported him missing. We were heartbroken. Our son was gone, and if he came back in the form he was in, we would have to kill him. A beloved son. That night, as we were about to go to bed, we heard a knock at the door. Barbara ran downstairs before I could stop her. I ran down right behind her, and when she opened the door, she stood still like a statue. I ran over to the door and saw someone I prayed I would never see again. It was the man, the original Lazarus. He looked down at us and said in a deep, hardened voice, "I gave you a child, and all I asked for in return was for you to follow the rules I gave you." Neither of us could speak. We were still in shock. The man spoke again. "I'm not here to punish you. That is not my job. I'm here to warn you. You broke the most important rule. Now you have let out a monster into this world." Barbara yelled at the man, "Why did you give us that list? You ruined our son's life. I know my son, and I know he is not a monster. He needs us now more than ever." "Did you not read the rules?" he asked in a calm voice. "Of course we did," Barbara said. "You know what will happen then. That thing out there now is not your son. You know what you must do, and I hope you make the right decision." The man then turned and walked away slowly. Barbara slammed the door shut and started to cry again. "I can't, Dave. I can't kill our son," she said. "We have to, Barbara. We messed up, and people will die if we don't kill him." She looked down with tears in her eyes. Then she looked up at me and nodded slowly. We knew he would come back. We just didn't know when. The next day I went to the gun shop nearby and bought a shotgun and some ammo. I knew we were going to need it. We stayed up that night and waited by the door, but there was nothing. We waited for hours and hours. By that time, Barbara was now fast asleep, and I started to drift off as well. Before I did though, I heard a voice outside. "Mom? Dad?" I jolted wide awake now. "He's here." Barbara woke up as soon as she heard the voice too, and started to head towards the door. I stopped her before she opened it. "It's not him, Barbara. Don't listen to it." She looked at me, then at the door, as we heard another voice outside. "Mom, I'm cold. I want to go inside. I miss you guys, and I'm sorry that I yelled at you." It almost fooled me. I even started to reach for the door handle before reality kicked in, and I stopped myself. Before I could even stop her, Barbara flung the door open. I pointed my shotgun, expecting to see the monster I saw a couple of days ago. I gasped as I saw Lazarus. He was completely normal looking now. Barbara ran and gave him a hug, but I sensed something was wrong. Lazarus didn't even flinch or acknowledge Barbara in the slightest. He only looked down at the ground. Then I saw him look up at me and saw the glowing yellow eyes. "Barbara, get away from him!" I yelled, pointing the shotgun at the monster. Barbara didn't listen to me, continued hugging Lazarus and kissing him on the head. In a swift motion, the creature grabbed Barbara and bit into her throat. I heard Barbara trying to scream, but she couldn't. Blood was squirting out of her throat as she crawled towards me. "I'm sorry," she gasped as she stopped moving and lay motionless on the ground. I looked up to see the creature staring at me with its yellow eyes. Then it smiled, feeling its razor-sharp teeth covered in blood. I fired a quick shot at it and ran towards the backyard. I ran into the shed where I could hear the creature crawling right behind me. I made it into the shed just in time as I heard a loud bang when I closed the door. I held the door as I heard the creature banging on it. I tried with all my might to keep the door closed, but I couldn't. I then spotted a spare lock I had in the shed and quickly locked the door with the lock. The creature banged and banged. Slowly I saw the lock starting to break. No. No. It can't end like this. I started to cry now, knowing my fate was sealed. I then looked down at the shotgun and thought, if I'm going to die, I'm not going out without a fight. The creature gave another hard bang at the door before the lock gave out. I cocked the gun back and pointed at the creature. It looked at me with its yellow eyes, glowing in the night. The last thing it said to me in a dark, raspy voice was, "Let's have some fun, Dad." My best friend is a cannibal. I met Anthony when I was in the second grade. We were assigned to the same tables together and we instantly hit it off. We had so much in common with each other. We both loved Legos, drawing, video games. The list could go on and on. We would hang out almost every day after school. He would come over and we'd play video games for hours, and when we were done, we'd play Legos. As we got older, Anthony became like a protector for me. I was a skinny kid. He'd get picked on all the time by the older kids, but Anthony would always come to my rescue and scare them off with his size. Anthony was a huge kid. By the time we got to middle school, he was 6'4" and weighed over 200 pounds. No one would mess with Anthony, and we knew he was my best friend, so they wouldn't dare mess with me either. Even though Anthony seemed intimidating, he really was a nice guy. He never liked how big he was because he always felt out of place around school and at home. Anthony's parents were not tall in the slightest. His mum was 5'2" and his dad 5'8". His mum was especially nice to me. She'd always bake me cookies when I came over to their house, while Anthony's dad was a whole other story. He scared me. He may not have been super tall, but he made that up with his size. He was a big guy with huge shoulders and big arms. He never talked to me much, but when he did, he spoke in this low, rough voice that sounded like he'd just woken up. One thing I picked up quickly on Anthony was he never ate meat. The first time he came over for dinner, we had steak, which he refused to eat. "I don't like meat. Can I just have the salad and potatoes?" I thought it was odd at first, but that was because I didn't know about vegetarians and vegans. When I went to his house though, his freezer had a bunch of meat. Chicken, turkey, pork, etc. I asked him about it when we were playing on his computer in his room. He was quiet at first and then said, "All that meat in the freezer was for my parents. They'd love it, unlike me." When we got older, I asked him if he was a vegetarian, and his answer was a bit odd. "Yeah, something like that." What else could he be, I thought. My thoughts on this, though, died as we got out older. When we got into high school, I started to notice changes with Anthony. He got into lots of fights and suspensions. The older kids picked on him a lot, and when he tried to fight back, they would gang up on him and beat him to a bloody pulp. He would frequently have black eyes when I came over, and I would always ask why he felt he needed to fight. He never gave an answer though. He'd always try to talk about something else if I asked. At this point I was getting bullied a lot too, but unlike Anthony, I didn't care what he said. I would just ignore them. It'd eventually leave me alone. Another important detail I picked up on early was his basement. I went in only once and it just seemed off. It was huge for a basement, a big open area with only a couple fridges full of more meat and some ice. Most of the time the basement was locked. Seemed odd, but I didn't care for it after a while. One day though, one of the guys who usually beat up and picked up on Anthony disappeared from school. His name was Tommy, and he was kind of the ringleader to the group that would beat up Anthony regularly. At first no one paid attention when he wasn't at school for a couple of days, but then the days turned to weeks, and the weeks turned to months. Missing posters of Tommy started to show up around school, and rumours started to spread. People believed Anthony had something to do with the kidnapping, but I didn't believe any of those rumours. I knew my best friend would never do anything truly bad to Tommy. He isn't like that. He wouldn't, would he? I did start to have my doubts, but when I asked Anthony, he swore in his mother's life he didn't do anything to him. Months and months went by with the police searching for Tommy, but they couldn't find him. Eventually, they gave up on the search. Everyone seemed to forget about Tommy, but I didn't. Anthony seemed in a better mood when they gave up the search. I started to grow suspicious. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I thought deep down that Anthony did something to Tommy. I tried talking to Anthony about Tommy, but he would get pissed every time I did, accusing me of believing the rumours at school and asking me how I couldn't believe his best friend. I stopped asking him shortly after that, and I just forgot about Tommy. As time went on, high school got better for me and Anthony. Anthony started to play football and became really good as a linebacker. He even started to get a couple scholarships from some big colleges. I didn't do any sports, but I met a wonderful girl named Vanessa, who would eventually become my wife. Vanessa was wonderful. She was an average height girl with long red hair and bright blue eyes. She was perfect for me. We both loved books, writing, and movies. I would come over a lot and we would cuddle as we watched a romantic movie. Romance was our favourite genre in writing and movies. The only problem was that Vanessa did not like Anthony at all. When we were at her house one night in our room, I asked her why she didn't like Anthony, and she said, "He's creepy, Josh. Plus, didn't he do something to a kid like a year ago at our school?" "He didn't do anything, V. He isn't like that. Sure, he may have beat him up possibly, but he wouldn't kidnap him or kill him. That's not who he is," I said. "How do you know though, Josh? He may have promised you he didn't do anything, but anyone can lie when they're desperate." I thought about this for a moment. We saw in his mother's life, and that was more than a promise. I changed the subject after that, which Vanessa appreciated. After that, we watched a movie in the living room. Halfway through the movie, I looked at my watch, which read 9:34 p.m. Shit, Mom said be back by 9:30. I got up from Vanessa's couch and kissed her goodbye. "We'll finish the movie later," I said. She kissed her hand and blew it at me, saying, "Okay, love you, babe." I ran out as I looked down at my phone to see my mum calling. "Where are you? It's 9:34 and I told you to be back by 9:30. "Sorry, Mum. I just lost track of time," I said. My mum wasn't one of those strict parents who got on kids who weren't home right on the dot, so she said, "Okay, honey, drive safe and I'll see you at home. I love you." "Love you too," I said. As I drove home, Vanessa's words were echoing in my mind. "He may have promised you he didn't do anything, but anyone can lie when they're desperate." Maybe she's right. Maybe he did lie to me. I thought, wait, no, this is Anthony we're talking about, your best friend since second grade. The memory of what Anthony said to me when I asked about Tommy came back out of nowhere. "Bro, why wouldn't you just trust your best friend? I'm not lying to you, I didn't do shit to Tommy. I swear, dude, on my mom's life, you have to believe me." Who should I trust? My girlfriend or my best friend? I started to get a headache thinking about this as I pulled into my driveway. I unlocked my front door and saw my mom sitting on the counter drinking some water. Looked up as I walked in and said, "Hey Josh, how was your time at Vanessa's?" "It was good. We started the third 50 Shades of Grey movie. We didn't finish it, but we probably will tomorrow." "Oh, how fun," she said, as she hugged me. My parents were divorced and I lived with my mom. They didn't divorce because of cheating or anything bad. They just decided they were better off as friends. I would go over to my dad's place about 3 times a week usually. He lived pretty close to where we lived, so going back and forth from my parents' houses was pretty easy. "Are you hungry at all?" my mom asked. "No, I'm good." "Hey Mom," I asked. "Yes, sweetie?" she asked. I've never asked in a while, but what do you think about Anthony? She looked at me then, thought for a moment before saying, "Well, I think he's a good kid. He's been your best friend for a long time, and he's been almost like your personal bodyguard," she said with a laugh. I laughed, then said, "Yeah, I was just wondering, because remember that kid that went missing about a year ago at our school?" "How could I forget? I was getting so many messages about it from my friends," she said. "Well, remember how I also told you the kid who went missing was bullying Anthony?" I asked. "Yes, what are you getting at, Josh?" she said. "Do you think Anthony did anything to him? Or did something with him?" My mom was quiet now. She looked down at the floor, then up at me as she said, "I don't think that Anthony would do something like that." "Why do you think he would?" she asked. I don't know. It's just when the police were searching and the kids were making rumours, he was so nervous. He quivered when he spoke, and he could never look at me in the eye. When the police finally gave up on their search, he just went back to normal again," I said. "Well, maybe he was nervous that the police would hear the rumours, and they would ask him questions and maybe arrest him. There are lots of reasons to be nervous, Josh. The police especially make people nervous." I thought about this for a moment. Maybe she's right. Anthony was just scared that the police might arrest him. That's reasonable. "Okay, thanks for listening, Mom," I said, heading up to bed. "Oh, of course, sweetie, I love you," she said. "I love you too." The next day at school, I texted Anthony and asked if he wanted to meet up at lunch. He agreed, and after sitting down, we talked about football, school, girls, the normal stuff. It felt like old times again. I didn't realise how much I actually missed really talking with him. "Hey, bro, I've missed hanging out with you. It feels like we never do anymore," Anthony said. "Yeah, I know. We should definitely hang out sometime," I said. "How about tonight? you don't have anything to do. He said, yeah, I'd love to, dude, I said. The bell rang, and before we took off to our classes, he said as he gave me a fist bump, sick man, come over to my house around 4. Sounds awesome, see you then, I said, waving before heading off to my next class. I met up with Vanessa after school as I usually did, to walk her home. On the walk, she asked if I wanted to come over tonight to finish the movie. Sorry babe, not tonight. I'm hanging out with Anthony, I said. She looked at me with an annoyed and worried expression on her face. She said, babe, you know I don't like you hanging out with him. It could be dangerous and I just don't get a good vibe from him. I started to get a little annoyed as I said, V, he's my best friend. I know deep down he's a good person. He's protected me and been by my side almost my whole life. I'm not going to start hanging out with him just because of some stupid rumours that were made up about him almost a year ago. She was quiet for the rest of the walk. She didn't even say goodbye or I love you at the house. She just walked inside, slamming the door behind her. I sighed as I started to head home. I looked at the time on my phone, which read 3:34 p.m. Might as well head to Anthony's now, I thought. Anthony only lived a couple of minutes away from me on the other street, so I walked back to my house and ate something quickly before I told my mum I was heading over to Anthony. Okay, Josh, have fun. Be back by at least 9:30 this time, okay? Yeah, Mum, I won't forget, I said, giving her a hug before I left. After a couple of minutes of walking, I turned to Anthony's street and saw his house. It was the first house on the street, a simple brown 2-story house with small windows in at the top and bottom of the house. I walked up to the door and checked my phone before ringing the doorbell. 3:48. A little early, but I'm sure he won't mind. I rang the doorbell, and not even a minute later, Anthony opened the door, smiling. Hey, ma'am, come inside, he said. I walked in the house, and the house looked the same as it always had. Same red couch in the living room, same brown dinner table, same big portrait of Anthony's family. Everything was the same. I saw Anthony's mom, who came and gave me a hug and said, Feels like it's been a while, Josh. How have you been? I've been good, Mrs. Johnson, I said. I saw Anthony's dad watching football on the couch, and as he saw me, he gave me a single nod. I nodded back to him as me and Anthony ran upstairs. We went to his room, which had been redecorated a bit since the last time I saw it. There was a bunch of football posters of players and teams now hanging around his wall. He told me as I looked around at his posters that his favourite team was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I kept looking and noticed there were lots of Buccaneer players wearing their red and black jerseys. We decided to fire up the PlayStation and play some Madden, since that was his favourite game. I didn't enjoy playing it as much, but Anthony was having a blast, so I kept playing with him. We played for a good hour before we decided to switch to Call of Duty. We played for hours, talking and laughing as we talked about our old memories, but we eventually got quiet because we started to get competitive as we kept playing. After a while, I checked the time, which read 9 o'clock. Damn. Almost time to go. After the last game, I got thirsty. I told Anthony I was going to head down and get a drink of water. He didn't even look up, as he was locked into the new game and started without me. Okay, be quick, I want to destroy you again like I did in the last match, he said. You wish, I said with a chuckle as I headed downstairs. I walked down the stairs fast but quiet since Anthony's parents were in bed now. Once downstairs, I located the cabinet with the cups in the dark and grabbed some water from the fridge. As I was drinking my water, I started to notice something. A smell started to fill my nose that worsened quickly. It smelled nauseating and sweet, like burning leather almost. When the smell worsened, I picked up something with the smell. It smelled like something dead. When I was walking home a week ago, I saw a dead squirrel in the middle of the street, and as I passed it, it had a strong odour like the one I'm smelling now. I started to follow the smell now, curious as to what it was. I navigated through the dark, and once I located the smell, I froze in place. The smell was coming from the basement, and even in the dark I could see the door was slightly open. I gulped and decided whether I should go in or not, but curiosity won as I descended down the stairs. I held up my phone as light as I plucked my nose walking down. The basement looked the same as usual, but as I got close to the smell, as it burned into my nose even as I was plucking my nose, I could see there was a plastic container tucked away into the far corner near one of the fridges. I got closer and closer as the odour got stronger and stronger. Once I reached the container, I could see there was some kind of meat inside. I don't know why, but I opened the container and gasped as I fell back in horror. There were 2 human fingers sitting on top of the meat, and between the meat I could see an eye barely visible. I almost threw up at the sight, but I somehow managed to keep it in as I started to freak out. What the hell is this? A dead human? Who? Why would Anthony have this? Then it hit me. I didn't want to believe it, but the thought creeped in. Is this Tommy? You shouldn't be here, Josh, I heard from behind me. I span around to see Anthony staring there motionless. We stood there staring at each other. Anthony didn't look angry or sad. He just had this blank look on his face. I broke the silence. Anthony, what the hell is this? I asked, stuttering. Well, Josh, that's something important to me that I don't want anyone to know about, he said. I asked, stuttering even more. Is this a person? He laughed before saying, Maybe. It's someone we both knew, he said with a smile. Dude, you're scaring me. Just what the hell is this? I say in a panicked voice. He was silent for a moment before he said, Might as well tell you the truth. You won't live to tell it, he said as he pulled a knife out from his pocket. I backed into the corner as he continued. When Tommy was walking home from school that day, I knew what I had to do. I did it for the both of us, Josh. You got to understand that. I grabbed him and knocked him out and brought him here. I'm surprised no one was around to see it. Oh God, the feeling of stabbing Tommy, piercing the knife into him as he screamed, it was the best thing I've ever felt. He was now getting close to the corner where I was, unable to move or go anywhere, as I knew he would catch me. I didn't tell you something, Josh. Before we met there was this day when my mum burnt her hand on the stove and a little bit of her skin fell off. I was young and curious, and while Mum was in the bathroom cleaning the wound, I ate the skin. It tasted so good. Like bacon, but much, much better, he said, with his grin becoming wider. When I finished killing Tommy, I got so hungry, and he just looked so good. I tried for too long to resist my urges. As I took a bite of his finger, I knew I would never be able to stop. So I've stashed his body here, preserving it and eating it when I get hungry. You know I can't eat normal meat, Josh. He was now a couple feet away from me, his grip on the knife becoming tighter as he was upon me. I somehow asked in my panicked state, Do your parents know? Of course, they've known about my urges since I ate my mother's skin. They know I need the food. I crave it almost every day, he said. He was right in front of me now. I was shaking as he pressed the knife against my throat. What? Why did you have to come down here, bro? I don't want to have to kill you, he said. I won't. Please, Anthony, I won't tell, I begged. He chuckled and then said, As much as I'd like to believe that, we both know you won't, he said as the knife pressed closer and closer against me. I can't have you ruining my scholarships, now can I? He said, then continued, Don't worry, Josh, we'll still be together forever. I'm sure you'll taste really nice, he said, licking his tongue. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't fight him because he was so much stronger than me, so I did the only thing I could think of. I swung my phone at him as hard as I could and connected near his mouth. He fell back and screamed in pain as I saw blood coming from his mouth. I took the opportunity I had and ran towards the basement stairs. Before I got there, Anthony grabbed my leg and tried to drag me down with him. In one quick motion, I turned around and kicked him as hard as I could in the nose and ran. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could, and out the door and out the house, never looking back. I ran all the way home and slammed the door once I got inside. I heard my mum's voice from behind me before I even turned around. Young man, where have you been? I've been trying to call you and you never answer. I was just about to call the police before you came. I broke down and started crying. My mum, noticing this, came and hugged me as I sobbed and told her what happened. After I told my mum everything, she asked if I had called the police. Stupid, why didn't I do that? I thought. My mom called the police and told them what happened. Shortly after, we heard a knock at the door and saw the two cops outside. First cop was a male with a short goatee and brown hair, and the second one was a female with short blonde hair. They told us they arrested Anthony after they found him in the basement, still laying on the ground, knocked out. They found the container and found everything my mum had told cops I had found. They said they would determine who it was the next day, but I think they knew who it was already. Anthony's parents were also arrested as well, since my mum told them their involvement in the murder. The cops said they didn't even put up a fight. Just put out their hands without even saying anything. Gave up as soon as they saw us come in, the male officer said. After the cops gave us some other details, such as the trial date and charges, they left. I went to bed right after, hoping to forget about the nightmare I'd just experienced. The DNA test came in the next day, and the body was confirmed to be Tommy's. Everyone was talking about what happened at school. People were pointing their fingers at me and whispering as I walked down the hall. Vanessa came running to me as I was heading to my first class and gave me a tight hug. I could see she had tears in her eyes. "Are you okay? I thought something had happened to you. You never answered any of my texts or calls." I didn't say anything. I was too tired from the night before to talk or argue. The rest of the day was how I would expect it. Everyone talking about Anthony and asking me if I was okay. A week later, Anthony's trial was set. They'd asked me to come in as a witness, but I declined. I don't want to see that monster ever again. Even without me as a witness, Anthony pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. Anthony's parents pleaded guilty to involvement in the murder and were sentenced to 30 years in prison. After I graduated high school, I left my hometown and went to college at the University of Washington. Vanessa came to college with me, and together we bought an apartment. Shortly after, we decided to get married. In college, me and Vanessa majored in journalism. After graduating, we got jobs working for Washington Post as reporters, where we still continued writing stories, and eventually we published a book on the short stories we made. 10 years later, and I was the editor for the Washington Post, and Vanessa was the executive editor. We also had 2 kids, Charlie and Richard. Charlie was a lot like me, and Vanessa, smart, intelligent, and very quiet. Richard was smart too, but he loved to talk and was a very social kid. He wanted to play football and other sports, while Charlie just likes to draw and read. Life was good for us. We lived in a good neighbourhood, and we had good jobs in a great house. As I was heading out the door, drinking my coffee, I caught something in the news. Breaking news as killer and cannibal Anthony Johnson has escaped from prison. Police say Johnson escaped from breaking a vent in his cell and using the sewer system as an escape route. Police also say the escape took Johnson a long time to plan and execute based on the dents and bruises on the vent. The killer is notorious for his murder of Tommy. I turned off the TV quickly. The memories all came back to me. I started to sweat as Vanessa came downstairs. "Josh, you okay?" she asked. I couldn't move, talk, or think. The monster who caused me years of restless nights. The monster who I once considered my best friend. The monster who tried to kill me has escaped prison. Suddenly, I felt a vibration from my phone. I opened it and saw an unknown number was calling. I answered in a shaky voice. Hello? A voice came on the other end, one I had prayed I would never hear for the rest of my life. "Hey Josh, been a while."